that's okay. An indication that we're in public session? Yes. Okay. Before I speak to anybody that will come into the public gallery, there's nobody in the public gallery at the moment. Are members aware of any declarations of interest that they need to make more than or new to any declarations that have previously been made? No, and as the new chair, I don't have any further declarations to make at this stage. Just going to advise anyone in the public gallery that they're welcome to use mobile devices as long as they're in airplane mode and that all devices are muted, and it's not permitted to take any photographs or record at the meeting. So members, as this is my first meeting as chair of the Agriculture and Environment and Rural Affairs Committee, I would like to begin by paying tribute to Lord Elliott for all his hard work on this committee and wish him all the best in the House of Lords. I think he did around 16 years in total in the Assembly as well as chairing this committee, and he's performed various other functions, and I know that he's held in very high esteem. I also wish to say that I'm very much looking forward to working with this committee and all of the opportunities and challenges that lie ahead for us all. Just want to invite other members if they want to. Yes, Declan?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I want to take the opportunity to welcome you into your position as Chair and as Vice Chair. I look forward to working with you. I had the opportunity to speak to you last night at the BVA annual dinner. And also spoke to the former Chair, Tom, there last night as well, and wished him well. So just take the opportunity. Certainly I found when Tom was the Chair here, I found him to be very, very fair and impartial and was very good at managing the meetings, and certainly he brought a huge amount of knowledge, being from a very rural agricultural background himself. He brought a lot of knowledge to the committee and indeed to his work, and no doubt he'll be furthering that knowledge in his new position. So just wish him well and wish you well too, Chair.
Thank you, Dick. I appreciate that. Michelle?
Okay, thank you, Chair, and obviously wish him well as he takes on a new adventure. I think that we all appreciated his practical and obviously his rural experience and his knowledge, and that went down particularly well with stakeholders. Obviously welcome yourself to the position, and you do have big welly boots to fill. So look forward to working with you on the committee.
Appreciate it. Thank you very much, Michelle. And Patsy?
Yep. I too would like to be associated with the comments and to thank Tom for his steady role and fairness and the competence that he brought to the particular function of chair of a committee. It's never that easy whenever you're trying to accommodate all things, but anyway he did it well with a moderating influence. And likewise, just as I said to you earlier previously in private, to wish you, Robbie, all the very best in the role as chair. I know you'll function perfectly well too, and keep us all in check. So good luck anyway, Robbie.
Thank you so much. We're soon going to find out, but I genuinely think it would be really good. And just to make the committee aware, I did get a handover brief from Lord Elliott, I think on Tuesday morning, and I echo what has already been stated. A very comprehensive brief, but very fair and very measured. So thank you. Members, today is going to be a shorter public meeting as we'll be doing effective questioning techniques in closed session from around 10:45. So the other thing I'd like to do is to close off the last item is to seek your permission to write a letter to Lord Elliott to thank him for his service and wish him all the best in the future. Thank you. Okay, we do have apologies for the second part of the agenda from Michelle McIlvaine, Tom Buchanan and Patsy McGlone. I think you've already picked up the training on the from John Sturrock. And if that's okay, are there any other apologies to record, Clerk? Anybody aware of any other apologies? No? Okay, guys, if we move into agenda item 2, which is chairperson's business. At page 5 of the pack, you'll find a letter from Lord Elliott thanking the committee team, committee members for their support during this time as chair and making the committee a positive environment to work in. Good morning, John. Lord Elliott gives his best wishes for the future of the work of the committee. Are you content to note?
Yeah.
Thank you, members. Okay. Members, at page 6 to 11 of the pack, there is an invitation for the committee members to the launch of the Centre for Public Policy and Administration on Friday the 25th of October from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. in Queen's University. The Centre is a new initiative designed to strengthen collaboration between academia and policymakers, building on established models of practice and supported by the UK Government. Could you please inform the committee team if you're planning to attend so that they can do the courtesy of informing the event organisers? Agenda item 3 are the draft minutes of the previous meeting. I refer you to pages 13 to 27 of the pack for the draft minutes dated 26th of September 2024. Have you any comments, or are you content with the minutes as drafted? Okay, and if members agreed, which it looks like they are, I'll ask the Deputy Chair to sign them and then publish these on the website, as I hadn't attended the meeting. Thank you, Vice Chair. Okay. Agenda item 4, matters arising. I'm going to refer to the response from the Department dated 27th of September at pages 28 to 31 of the pack, in reply to our letter dated 13th of September regarding the Sheep Task Force support for the sheep industry. The Minister states that he is yet to meet the Sheep Industry Task Force, but plans to do so in October, and he'll advise the committee of those in the future in due course. The Department has also advised that in respect of the carbon impact of hill sheep farming, it is not DAERA, but the models of the National Atmospheric Emissions Inventory that disaggregates the sheep sector. This allows comparisons to be made between the emissions of sheep across a range of farm types. The data shows that emissions from ewes on upland categorised farms are approximately 8% lower than the emissions from ewes on lowland categorised farms. Are members content to note? Any questions then? Okay, thank you, members. I refer you to a response from the Department dated 27th of September at pages 32 to 36 of the pack in reply to our letter of 13th of September regarding the Northern Ireland Audit Office report of misrepresented soil analysis. We requested what controls and measures NIEA put in place and what was communicated with stakeholders. The Department has advised that the control measures are on the DAERA website, however, are included in the response for committee's ease of reference. The control measures require the submission of information to allow the authenticity of soil sample analysis reports to be determined by NIEA, and in a small number of cases, NIEA has resampled some fields to verify the submitted results. And becoming aware of the widespread submissions of false soil sample analysis reports, NIEA alerted relevant stakeholders as listed in the response. I'm not going to read those out, they're in the pack, guys, if that's okay. The stakeholders were given information on the discovery of the suspected fraud so that they could consider actions within the scope of their responsibilities. In relation to the local councils, information on the suspected fraud was provided for each specific planning application within its the jurisdiction that was affected. Are you content to note at this stage, as we know that the Assembly PAC has primacy on this report as present?
Yep.
Okay. Thank you. Members, I refer you to the response from the Northern Ireland Mushroom Growers Association dated 27th of September at pages 37 to 42 of your pack. This is in reply to our email of 13th of September. 13th of September is a busy day. Requesting a response regarding the seasonal worker visa review by the Migration Advisory Committee. NIMGA state that the review has failed to provide any remedy for the sector in relation to access to labour, and that the current 6-month visa is one of the only means through which mushroom farm can access labour. This arrangement costs farms over £8,000 per worker for 6 months and is much worse than visa arrangements in the Republic of Ireland, where mushroom harvesters can stay for up to 5 years. There is a table in the response, members, illustrating the cost to producers in Northern Ireland as a result of the 6-month visa. There is also a response to the 5 main themes of MAC's recommendations to the Home Office. Are you content that we forward this to the Department and ask for their response on these comments?
Okay.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you. Yes.
Just in relation to this, I was just wondering whether or not we need to broaden this out in relation to the seasonal workers issue and perhaps write to the Committee for the Economy too, because we're really just going round in circles. I think it's obviously a much bigger issue, and it's obviously cross-sectoral as well. So it might be something that they are also looking at or may assist us with.
I think it is. It's more broadly connected. I do agree with that. But in reading the pack, actually, I found it one of the more sort of immediately interesting topics to grasp. I'm content, members, if you're okay. We'll draft a letter for the Department of Economy on that. Okay, thank you.
Chair, sorry, do you wish us to write to the Committee for Economy and the Department?
I'm not sure really what the protocol is with regards to committee to
perhaps committee in the first instance to see if they're planning to look at the issue. Yeah.
It is a real issue, Mr. Chairman.
Absolutely.
For the especially mushroom growers, because by the time you get the staff trained, they're ready to leave again.
There's a lead-in time into the training. It's quite significant. It's more than people would think, which
Absolutely,
is quite considerable.
yeah.
Thank you. Okay, so it's the committee that we're going right to. Okay, thank you, members. I refer you to correspondence in your pack at page 43 regarding a correction to the evidence that Reyes gave at last week's meeting. Reyes stated that there had been no review of the Rural Needs Act since 2016, but wishes to clarify that a limited review has indeed taken place. Reyes apologises for the oversight and has published an updated version of the paper, adding new text to page 48 of the paper as follows. A review into the implementation to the Rural Needs Act was instigated by DAERA in 2019 through a working group. The chair of the working group acknowledged the limitations of the review to, quote, the focus of the review was on the implementation of the legislation by public authorities and the support provided by DAERA rather than on the policy outcomes and the impacts on the public service. The working group published a report in 2020 and a copy is at pages 44 to 119 of the pack. It included 25 recommendations. They included a couple that I'm just going to bring to your attention, if that's okay. A lack of awareness of the need to comply with the due regard duty and of what is required to be done to fulfil that duty, and that there is merit in undertaking research to identify examples of where the Rural Needs Act or rural proofing has made a positive difference to rural communities. Reyes highlights that an Assembly question answered in 2021 suggested that whilst DAERA has made progress in implementing a number of the working group recommendations, there was much more work to do. So members, in terms of committee actions in this area, the clerk has asked me to highlight that we now have a briefing from the Rural Policy Unit in the department in the diary for the 14th of November. Also a committee meeting with stakeholders at Caffrey and Cookstown is in the planning for 21st of November, at which these matters can be explored further. Are you content to note this clarification from Reyes, or do any members want to raise any points in regard? Happy enough. So it's in the forward work plan, so that it's not going to be missed, if that's okay.
Chair, just on a wee point of detail, I take it those representatives from the department who will be available that day will be able to brief us on what, if any, of the actions have been fully or partially complied with as recommended in the report.
Mm-hmm. Sure, I can certainly ask them to cover that in the briefing. Yeah.
Just make sure that that's covered. I think it will be. Certainly in my brief analysis of it, that is only a brief analysis, is that it was very much structured around the processes in terms of the implementation of it rather than measuring the outcomes and stuff, and I think that's
I would just like to see what progress we've made in the outcomes, because it is since 2020.
Yes,
so,
no, I think that's a good point. We will capture that in one of the questions.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else, guys, on that matter? Okay. I refer you to the response from the department dated 30th of September at page 120 of your pack in reply to our letter of the 13th of September regarding blue tongue virus. The department has confirmed that it has no information to suggest that animals are being sourced illegally. The department and industry have both called on farmers to source animals responsibly in order to reduce the risk of blue tongue incursion. Members, are you content to note this at this stage? Yes? Okay, thank you, members. I refer you to the response from the department dated 30th of September at pages 122, 131 of the pack in reply to our letter of the 20th of September regarding rebuilding the aquaculture sector. This is a substantial response from the department in addressing current and future challenges, supporting balanced industry-led sustainable growth of aquaculture in line with the priorities of the draft programme for government. The Minister notes that he has agreed policy themes for inclusion in a forthcoming fisheries bill for supporting the sustainable development of all aquaculture subsectors. The response notes that there are various actions in process to address water quality and the environmental improvement plan in addressing water quality together with the Loch Ness plan. The response also refers to financial support, and Minister Muir opened the Marine Environment and Fisheries Fund in July of 24. Members, it's in our draft forward work plan to receive a written briefing mid-December on the development of the fisheries bill. Are you content to note his response and forward to the Aquaculture Representatives Group and ask for their comments in response?
Yeah.
Thank you, members. And I refer you to the responses from the department dated 30th of September at pages 132, 135 of the pack in reply to our letter on the 13th of September regarding Loch Ness and the progress of the Environmental Improvement Plan. A new head of the Loch Ness Action Plan, Delivery and Governance took up post on the 9th of September, members. A support team is being established and programme management structures introduced to govern and deliver the actions in the Loch Ness Report and Action Plan. So members, are you content to note and look forward to a briefing from the newly appointed project manager for Loch Ness Action Plan in due course? Yep. Yes, thank you. Members, you will note that the EIP was agreed by the Executive and led in the Assembly on the 28th of September, and I propose we ask for a briefing from the Minister on the Environmental Action Plan, and our members are in agreement with that. Yep. Okay, thank you. Okay, guys, thank you very much for your indulgence with that. We are now at agenda item 5, it's an oral departmental briefing on in-year information gathering and October monitoring. I refer members to pages 137, 148 of the pack and the briefing paper from the department on the update to the 24-25 financial position and the Hansard report of 6th of June on the briefing we took from DERA budget 24-25. The briefing paper states that in August 24, DOF commissioned an in-year 24-25 urgent information gathering exercise to help inform the management of departmental forecast overcommitments. That was a separate exercise from the October monitoring round, however, which concentrated on the Executive's resource DEL budget only. And members will note that the in-year exercise has not yet been concluded, so the October monitoring round is not yet commissioned, unless we've got news today. And however, we felt it important to have an update from officials. And I welcome the following departmental officials to the meeting: Mr. Roger Downey, the Director of Finance, Mr. Richard Macaulay, Deputy Finance Director, and Ms. Nuala Hennessy, Head of In-Year Financial Planning. Welcome, thank you very much for your brief. And if you could give us a 5 to 10 minute maximum briefing, please. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for the opportunity to brief the committee this morning on the 24-25 financial position. As Chair's already said, we were originally scheduled to brief you on the Department's October monitoring round proposals. However, given the need for the Executive to manage departmental resource DEL forecast overcommitments, DOF commissioned an in-year 24-25 urgent information gathering exercise in August. This exercise is not yet concluded, and DOF is waiting until this happens before it commissions the October monitoring round exercise. So my update this morning is on the 24-25 financial position in relation to this exercise. As part of this exercise, DERA advised that the 9.2 million resource DEL forecast overcommitment at the opening budget stage had reduced to 3.6 million, of which 2 million related to pay and pension pressures and 1.6 million related to bovine TB compensation. The reduction had arisen from the 4 million allocation by the Executive to bovine TB compensation at June monitoring and the 3.2 million savings identified in the department since then, offset by a projected 1.6 million increase in bovine TB comp. This is summarised in the table in your written briefing. DOF also asked departments to present how the forecast overcommitment would be affected if non-contractual pay costs were removed, and this is set out in that table as well. The Minister met with the Minister of Finance in September to discuss DERA's latest in-year financial position, and he highlighted the steps already undertaken to reduce the resource DEL forecast overcommitment, as well as the funding risks around animal disease as we approach the winter months. The Minister also took the opportunity to flag up 3 capital DEL bids totalling 9.1 million on the Tackling Rural Poverty and Social Isolation Programme, or TRIPSI, Green Growth, Climate Change and Blue Economy, and CAFRI estate improvements. We await the conclusion of this exercise and whether the department will be allocated any funding. We will then look at the parameters of the October monitoring round exercise whenever it is commissioned and consider next steps. That concludes my opening remarks on the update on the 24-25 financial position, and we're happy to take any questions.
Thank you so much for your presentation, and the challenges that are faced across all committees are very evident, and I appreciate that. When this briefing was scheduled, it was envisaged that we would be talking about the October monitoring rounds. However, the in-year exercise is still not yet complete, as has been raised. I presume that this means that there is an opportunity for the committee to feed into this process around the bids for October monitoring, and that we will hear from you on that reasonably soon.
Yes, as I say, DOF are waiting for the ongoing exercise to complete, and then they'll commission the October monitoring. I heard last week that they were hoping to get it out this week. Hasn't arrived yet, with the intention that they would go back to DOF by the end of October. But the position is still fluid. The exercise hasn't been commissioned yet. But yes, we're happy to come back to the committee.
Appreciate that. Thank you. And members, if we're mindful, we have around 20 minutes before we need to start the second session. Is that okay? So, John, sorry, Declan, Deputy Chair.
See in the 2.7 million bid in agriculture, are there any particular initiatives bid for, Roger, do you know?
Sorry, the 2.7 million.
I see something 2.7 million. Is there an agriculture bid?
The green growth, climate change and blue economy, the capital bid?
Yes. Is there any particular projects?
Not.
Yeah, that 2.7 is actually split into two elements. There's 1.5 in relation to AFB Green Growth to help establish a Northern Ireland Green Growth Research and Development platform, primarily to support DAERA in the delivery of its legislative responsibilities, and a further 1.2 to support proposals consistent with the Northern Ireland Executive's Green Growth Strategy and its commitment to net zero, including innovation and research on design on net zero fishing vessels, pilot initiatives and testing and adapting existing vessels to reduce emissions and blue carbon restoration.
And just a wee follow on then, not directly related to that, but you mentioned TB a couple of times there, Roger. What's the total cost to the department of the TB?
Compensation?
Just the total, along with administering all it too.
Well, the latest projections. So the executive allocated us 4 million there in June monitoring for TB compensation. So the department's obviously keeping a close eye on it, and incidence is at the highest where it is in over 20 years. And a further 1.6 million pressure has been identified since June monitoring. So they're currently projecting 40.8 million in TB compensation this year.
And what percentage is that of the overall department's resource budget?
Well, I suppose there's the budget that comes from the executive, and then there's the budget that comes directly from Treasury. So the budget that comes from the executive is 243 million. So 40.8 million as a percentage of 243 is about a sixth, which is around 17%. Yeah.
Thank you, Roger.
Thank you, Deputy Chair. John Blair.
Thank you, Chair. Can I start by putting on record my welcome to you in your new role and wishing you well for the times ahead, and say that I'm sure like other members are looking forward to working with you, Chair. And welcome the panel here also, and thank them for the information. It's a different issue than that raised previously, which is that the Hansard report from our previous discussion on the 6th of June, showed that I raised questions around the estate and the costs of the estate and how it could be best utilised. I was told then it was being reviewed. So the question is, given that there are pressures still here, even though some savings have been identified by, it says in the report, managing down operating costs, I'm keen to know, is managing down operating costs inclusive of reviewing estate matters, or will the review of estate matters that might lead to savings be separate to that?
The savings that were identified in those savings this year were not from the estate savings that you were referring to. Some of those were factored into the opening budget position. So at the stage of the opening budget, you'll be aware that staff have moved out of Dundonald House and Klondike House to Clare House and to NIA in Lisburn. And as part of that, the department's estate footprint has fallen 40%. That also includes, we now rent out the top floor in Jubilee House to DWP. So, and we're getting some income in from that as well. So those sort of savings were factored in at the opening budget stage. And those, including the top floor of Jubilee House, that's reduced the estate by the footprint by 40%. So there's already significant work going on there. There's also been a strategic review of the AFB estate has been underway, and that concluded over the summer as well. So it's moving into the next stage of it, but it's on a much longer trajectory because it's looking at wider sites. So they're not factored into the in-year position.
Okay, my question, Chair, at the time is pretty much based on the utilisation of what you might call outstations that DAERA would have throughout Northern Ireland, and in the context of where work patterns have changed, more people working from home, and it concerns me that a building that used to hold 10 people, for example, might hold a number much fewer than that, and therefore might not need to be used in the way that it is currently. So I'm assuming, if I could frame the question this way, that those matters would be included in the review, accepting that the review is being done by a separate team of people than yourselves, but I'm imagining that all of that utilisation will be looked at.
Well, there's an estates transformation division that look at the right across the estate, whether they're looking at those specific areas. I know there's part of there's a rolling asset estate review goes on, so they look, we have a very big estate right across the province, and the assets are various stages of age, and some require more maintenance than others. So there's an ongoing review going on within estates transformation
possible
division.
That further savings could come from that then?
Yes.
Thank you.
Sure, and just before I move on to Nicola, if I just ask one question, because I find this really interesting across the full sort of civil service and departmental brief in regards to the hybrid working. Is that being monitored in terms of the effectiveness of it? So I understand the benefit of it in terms of well-being for staff, and in terms of the effectiveness of it, maybe cost savings, or is there a cost benefit analysis being carried out ongoing?
Well, I suppose that's been factored into the fact we've been able to move out of Dundonald House and Klondike, and the footprint of the department's now 40% lower. In terms of wider effectiveness, I suppose that's for other parts of the department. So it's, we're here to talk about October monitoring, so I don't really have an answer to that. Okay,
it's something that I certainly would like the committee maybe just bear in mind across the gambit of what we do. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Thank you. Okay, Nicola.
Thank you, Chair, and may I also take this opportunity to formally welcome you to your new role and wish you all the best. We've worked very well and constructively together in the past, so I'm sure we'll do so in the future. So best of luck, Jane. Thank you. Thank you for your presentation here. I just have a quick question about the regulatory income that's generated by the Environments Agency. Can you give us a breakdown of exactly how much is generated and how it's used to support environmental objectives?
So it's running between, I suppose over the last 5 years, between 8 and 10 million. So it dipped slightly during COVID, 2020-21, and that covers just the wide remit that NIA does in terms of its regulatory duties. So that income just covers costs. So it's to enable full cost recovery. So there's not sure how many staff are involved in this, and then there's running costs and various other operating costs. So there's an exercise done each year in line with managing public money in Northern Ireland that the income should come in to cover those costs, and the income is adjusted accordingly.
So it doesn't. There's no environmental objectives or any projects that are built to be supported that way.
NIA, I'm sure if they were here giving a briefing, they would be able to go into that sort of detail. I just have at the high level so I know the money comes in to cover the costs.
That's fair enough. Thank you for that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Nicola. William?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for your presentation. You did, in response to the Vice Chair, say that total cost of compensation for TB was 40.8 million. That's only part of the cost of TB. What's the total cost of TB?
Well, yes, that's the compensation cost. So you've got salary costs going in there as well. You've got private vets as well, and testing kits as well. So when you add those elements up, it's probably in the region of 55 to 60. But
yes, that's what I reckoned.
Yeah. For this year, but we're coming into the winter period now, and that's when the animals are housed. So there's a risk that TB compensation could go higher. That's the vet's best estimate at this moment in time, and we'll see how that might change.
Massive cost to the executive, and
it is.
It is, like a few years back in this committee, we were told that the total cost was in the 20 millions, and that's doubled actually in real terms.
Yes, I think back in 18-19, the compensation cost was around 18 or 19 million. So it's doubled since then. So, and that's due to incidents and also market value. So it's the compensation alone, as we just mentioned, is around a sixth of the budget that we get to the executive. When you add in the salary costs as well and the other costs, it's an even higher proportion.
There was 4 million allocated. I take it that that was reduced to 1.6 million. There wasn't as much needed as necessary. Is that the way I read that, or am I wrong?
So at June monitoring, the vets predicted there was a pressure of 4 million. So we bid for the 4 million, and we got the 4 million from the executive. So over the summer, they've been obviously to monitor the incidence of TB throughout the country regularly. So when we were commissioning the October monitoring exercise to get the latest position, they were telling us that there's a further 1.6 million pressure. So that would have been on top of the 4 early in the year.
That's okay. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, William. And Tom?
Just to follow on from the TB issue, given that the likelihood is over the winter months that this is going to increase, what measures have you then put in place to ensure that there will be sufficient funds to compensate those that may well fall into this category and come down with TB?
Well, I suppose the vets have advised 1.6 million is their best estimate at this moment in time. As part of that exercise that DOF commissioned, we currently can't fund that. So DOF were asking for what's all departments' forecast overspends. So we put it into that category. So that's in the mix with the forecast overspends from all the other departments. And we're waiting the conclusion on that exercise to see if we get any funding. If we don't get any funding in that exercise, I would say we'll be bidding an October monitoring round if there's an opportunity to do so then. And then there'll be a January monitoring round exercise later in the year. So we have a few more goes at this to make sure we have sufficient funding in place.
Yeah, so the real issue is we're depending on monitoring rounds to get the sufficient funding for to cover the TB.
Well, I suppose the budgets change as we go through the year. There's slippage in some things, there's pressures arise, so we suppose we manage it in the round. The plan at the beginning of the year isn't the plan in September, isn't the plan in December, and that's why we take stock in monitoring rounds of where things have moved. So if we can manage it ourselves, we'll do that. If we need to bid to the executive, we'll do that as well.
With regards to subsidy funding, there's 4.4 million. And that's broken down between rural microcapital and rural business development. Can you give us what the split or the divide is within that? How much of that goes to the rural microcapital, how much of that goes to the rural business scheme?
Yep, the rural microcapital scheme is 2.6 million, and the rural business capital grant is 1.5 million of that.
Okay, thank you for that.
Thank you, Tom. And Patsy?
Thanks very much, Chair. And some of what I was going to ask has been already asked by William. But in regard to the bovine TB, you mentioned some of the figures there from previously, I think it was 2018. So what percentage of the total departmental budget has been, if you like, gobbled up by TB in the years since then? In other words, you mentioned potentially we could be looking at 55 to 60 million this year. Percentage of departmental budget, how much does that, if you haven't got the exact percentage, we can rely and get the figures again, but I'd just like to hear how that incrementally has increased.
Well, I suppose DAERA's overall budget has increased as well, so I suppose we would have to do some analysis of what the TB programme cost back, and it was actually 2019-20 where it was 19.5 million. So it's from that year. Earlier I said it was 18 or 19, so it was 19-20. So in that year it was 19.5 million. This year it's projected to be 40.8, so that's more than double.
That's purely in compensation?
That's purely in compensation, yeah.
So there's private veterinary charges plus other items that you mentioned there, plus internal departmental costs associated with that too?
Yes, there is. And there's also salvage income that comes in, so there's some income comes in to help cover those costs as well, so that's netted off.
And what rough percentage is that of the overall cost of the scheme to offset it?
It varies. This year it's projected there's 11 million coming in to help cover that. So that means we've less. So and that depends on market values and a number of different issues as well. So we take that into account whenever we're working out if we need to bid to the executive for TB compensation. So if there's enough income coming in and enough movements in the budgets around the rest of the department, then we don't need to bid to the executive. But if that's not the case, then we do, and that's where we currently are at the minute with the 1.6
It's not an ideal way to get income, sure it's not.
It's what,
it's not an ideal way to get income.
No, well, ideally it's...
No, that's not your fault, but I'm just an observation. So anyway, it's 55 to 60 million projected this year. That's tough.
Yes, it was 55.7 million last year when compensation was 36.5. So, so it's already in that region. That was the cost. That was the cost last year. So if compensation's higher, okay, some of that will be offset by an increase in salvage income. But you've got staff costs will be higher as well. So
and veterinary costs.
Yeah.
That's not a pretty picture at all, Chair.
No, not in terms of the financial piece or the worry and concern it has caused, obviously, in regard to TB and the welfare. So, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. And Anya has indicated.
Thank you, Chair. And just a quick supplementary from Nicola's point earlier on around NIEA and the income generated by the regulations. Are there any other regulations in place to secure income from DAERA?
Well, they would be the main income stream in the department. There would be tuition fees that come in for CAFRE students, but I don't think they're covered by. It's not. They're not viewed as regulatory income in the same way as NIA as regulatory income. We would also have sales on the farm. You know, there's milk sales, things like that, but they wouldn't be viewed as regulatory income in the same way as NIA as well.
Do you have any figures with you at the minute in relation to some of the subdivisions within DAERA, a forestry service or anything like that, in relation to income generated?
Do we have a breakdown of the income? So there's income comes from Food Standards Agency. So the vets do work, Veterinary Service Animal Health Group do work in the meat plants on behalf of the Food Standards Agency, and they give us income to cover that, and that's currently 8.8 million for this year. CAFRE, I've mentioned, has income as well for the tuition fees and from the operation of the farms. There's also the salvage income I've mentioned as well. So in terms of Forest Service, it's different. Its income used to be within the department, but it was reclassified a few years ago as a public corporation. So the interaction with Forest Service now is just a small subsidy that goes to them. So their income, they use that they're more of a further arm's length body. So they treat the income for their own purposes, so it doesn't come back to the department.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I've just got a couple of questions. One isn't necessarily covered on the paper, if that's okay, and it's just for me to get an understanding of where we are with the pressures on DAERA with regard to the implementation of the Windsor Framework and all of the things that are happening that fall under this department's remit. Does DEFRA cover all of those costs or any forecasted implications for the department?
So we get funding directly from Treasury to take forward the work that goes on at the points of entry. So there's specific funding for it. There's funding that we've had for a number of years as part of the NI protocol, and it's rolled over, and then there's new funding this year from the Windsor Framework, and that's all funded directly by Treasury. So that's why when I was asked earlier about what percentage of the TB budget, so because that comes from Treasury, we look at that separately, whereas the TB budget's funded out of the executive pot, so it's a proportion of that pot.
Just one final question, if you'll indulge me. I have a really keen interest in tackling loneliness and social isolation. So I noticed that there's a bid made by the Minister for 4.4 million in relation to tackling rural poverty and social isolation. And obviously there are health inequalities in regard to the impact of social isolation in particular and the comorbidities. Is there just any more detail in regard to what the £4.4 million relates to? Is that okay? Thank you, Richard.
I suppose that's the 2.6 million that goes to the Rural Micro Capital Grant Scheme. It was the first call went out on, I think it was the 8th of June, and there's been letters of offers issued in the end of August there for about 1.5 million relating to I suppose assistance from £200 to £1,500 up to 85% support for initiatives that are coming up, you know, in terms of proposals that address that rural poverty and social isolation initiatives. There's another call now of about 1.1 million coming up, and it's planned for about November time, the start of November, to give more support in terms of the 1.1 million, and that's planned subject to approvals for November.
And I think, I would imagine that a lot of the delivery is done by community and voluntary sector organisations, would that be fair? And yeah, are they under any pressure at the moment in regards to the security of funding? Are you aware?
We would need to check that with Rural Affairs Division.
Yeah, is that okay? Could I ask for that just because
yeah.
we've obviously we have debates in the chamber about the core grant and areas and that, but this is all interlinked, and I see this very critical to the. Okay, thank you very much. Is there anything else from the members?
Just to come on the back of that 1.1 million opening in November again, you said that's for Rural Micro?
Rural Micro Capital Grant Scheme, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you very much for your presentation. Look forward to seeing you again, members.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, guys. Agenda item 6, if that's okay, is correspondence, but we're not going to look at correspondence today, as we need to proceed to the effective questioning session. Any correspondence received will be considered our next meeting, where we will also consider the forward work plan. Okay, any other business, members? Does anybody have any other business? Okay, the date and time for our next meeting will be Thursday the 10th of October in Parliament Buildings at 10 a.m. And thank you very much, guys. That's a shorter than usual first session, and we're now going into closed session for the effective question techniques.
Committee Room 21. Sound.